How do I know?
George.
Is it red?
Yeah, it's red. There's a
All
corner.
right, yeah, then we're good then.
Okay.
All right, so I'll just start off with.
Go ahead and get started, yeah, and
Yeah.
I'll kind of go in my own little tangents
So
later.
today is August 25th. We're in the Maple Grove Library. I'm Kevin Yee, the interviewer. My dad, Georgie, is present, and Sean McMullen is here with us as our veteran. So thank you for coming today.
Oh, thanks for asking.
Yeah. Can you start by telling me where and when you were born?
I was born in Minneapolis in 1978. Basically grew up in Minnesota. Even went to school at Hamlin University in St. Paul. So.
Yeah. So who are your parents and what did they do?
Mars and Leanne. Mars is a salesman. He sold everything from tools to decks to construction equipment. Last thing he sold was like a waterproofing of basements. So he's just been a hard worker all his life. My mom started off as a X-ray tech and worked her way into other forms or fields of radiology. Now she's like a department manager at another hospital. So
Yeah. So did you have any kind of military background when growing up?
no, my dad was drafted for Vietnam, but had just gotten into a car accident like a couple weeks before. He got drafted, showed up, it's like, okay, we can't use you, and got sent away.
Yeah.
My grandfather did serve in the Korean occupation after World War II, before the Korean War.
Yeah.
But he got hurt while there, and that's about it. And later I found out after I joined the military that one of my great uncles served in submarines actually in World War II, was actually one of the submarines that went into Tokyo Harbor.
Yeah.
And some stuff, so like just crazy stuff that somebody did back in those days.
Yeah.
So I got to find out about that after the fact.
So do you remember what inspired you to join the military?
Well, honestly, it's because I needed a job. I was in grad school at the U of M and did a few interviews, a few places. I wasn't finding anything too great, so like, okay, well, I'll take a look, see what the military has to offer me. Interviewed with Air Force first, saying, here's my background, physics with some upshot engineering schooling, you know, what do you got? They pushed some research off of me. Okay, you know, guys seem kind of like kind of off, didn't like him so much. Yeah. Went into the Navy recruiter down by the U of M, and guys just put together uniform, all nice, set, sharp looking. And he was actually a former submarine chief.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, so here's what I am, what do you got for me? And here's this Navy nuclear program. Like, okay, well, a lot of money, seemed pretty cool. So I started going through that process, and going through the process that I went through is one of the unique things about submarine officers is that every submarine officer has to have had interviewed with a 4-star Navy admiral.
Yeah.
So that's just part of it. So I interview with all of his lackeys, they make sure I'm technically sound enough, and he basically put the final sign off. So I had to go meet him in DC, and then that day I signed as April 24th of 2003. And that's basically started my service, and just kind of around from there.
Yeah. So, at the time, how did your family feel about you joining?
They were proud. You know, they didn't really, it wasn't a big topic, like it didn't have a whole lot of like, necessarily military pride, but we didn't have any negative feelings. It just wasn't a big focus in the family, but you know, once I joined in, my parents have always been supportive, brother, sister, same thing, just I was proud of the service and what I got to do.
Yeah. So when did your training start?
So I signed on April, and then end of July is when my training pipeline started. Because so how the pipeline, the way I got in was this program called NUPOC, and I wish I would have known about it earlier. I might even got into the Navy 2 years earlier. But you start off in college, you go and interview, and you get accepted to the NUPOC program, and then they'll pay you. And once you graduate college, then they ship you out to this commissioning program called OCS. Do you know what OCS is?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me explain. Did that, and that I actually graduated on Halloween of 2003. After that, I got stashed back in Minnesota for like 6 months because they weren't ready for me to go into my next submarine training. I helped out with the ROTC recruiter in Minnesota for a bit. Got sent down to Charleston, South Carolina,
Yeah.
And that's where I did the nuclear training, the nuclear book training. I did that for 6 months. Then there's another 6 months up in Boston Spa, New York, stayed in Saratoga Springs, and that's where we do what you basically, what's the exact term? I forget the exact term for it. But that's where you're actually working on, do some more book learning, but now you're actually working on working nuclear reactors and getting that base knowledge of how nuclear power works. And then after that, I spent, was it 6 weeks? It's just a few weeks in Groton, Connecticut, and that's where I actually started learning how to do submarine schools.
Yeah.
How the kind of mindset is, you learn nuclear power to get you on the boat, but then after you know how to run the nuclear reactor, that's when we start teaching you how to actually drive and fight the boat. So your first part of your JO tour is you're learning all the nuclear stuff, and that's your first important watch you're going to get qualified to stand. This would be entering officer watch, so that's where you're watching and managing the nuclear reactor.
Yeah.
And then after that, you start learning, coincidentally, but then after that you'll get qualified to be officer of the deck. That's where you're actually giving the orders to how to drive the boat and position the boat tactically in accordance with what the captain wants.
Yeah. So how long did all of that take?
So all the training pipeline itself took about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And general rule of thumb is for every year of training they give you, they're going to want 4 years back. So there's a 5-year initial commitment that I had to go through.
So what do you remember most about training in general?
It was tough. Like the power school, you're trying to shove a 2-year master's degree into a group of young men and women in a 6-month period, and make sure that they understand the theory and application of it so well enough that they can go and they have the basics to be safe. And then doing another 6 months actually learning about this basic controlled ball of fire contained in a pressure vessel. You're learning how to run that as well. So it's intense, but it's basically they have it very efficient. They have it down. They know what you need to do. They know what kind of marks you need to hit so that you can get through. And they're help you get through as much as possible. There was a couple people who, in the prototype, that was the name of the program, we're actually working directly with the prototype program, got washed out. One of them had a bad watch. He's like, I'm not going back in there. Like, you realize you're disobeying a direct order. I'm going to have you discharged from the Navy. That's fine. I'm not going back in there. And that's just what happened with him. Other guy he took the most immaculate notes. Like, drawings, he made his own drawings that would be suitable for a textbook. But because he didn't know well enough for himself, he didn't feel like he could share that, try and express that knowledge to the trainers, so he just wouldn't, and he just got so far behind and we couldn't pull him through. Eventually he just got himself out, which is too bad, but good guy.
Yeah. So what was the most difficult part about it for you?
Geez, that was so long ago. This was back in '04, for the most part. It is an intense studying, and I had been out of undergrad for a couple of years, doing grad school, which wasn't as much studying as it was more like leading labs, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So
I had gotten also that study habits. So getting back to those study habits was tough, and having someone to do the mandatory hours. But then you're really self-directed, so you have to know your own time management and know where to focus. So now you're also having these other people there too. A bunch of young people just out of college who, they're all smart, but they also want to be social, and, Charleston's not a bad looking place if you get a chance to go there, so.
Yeah.
Trying to balance all of that, and was obviously able to do it and get through just fine.
Yeah. Do you remember any of your drill instructors, or?
Yes, Ground Instructor Murphy, United States Marine Corps. I think I took that picture back. I had my commissioning date. She was this less than 5 foot, just ripped little black woman, but my God, she had the respect of everyone there. Like, when she was around, the other drill instructors would not mess with my class. But when she wasn't around, though, they would come after us. I spent half my meals in OCS standing up eating because somebody screwed something up, like 0304 on your feet, up there and eating. So going through that process quite interesting.
Yeah.
And that was a tough. Don't talk about this, but it's tough in a different way because like you're from 5 in the morning till 10 at night. You are go go go. You're doing your PT. You're doing some Navy classes, and you're doing the studying up on some Navy knowledge, and then you have your inspections at 4, 6, week 10. There's another one I think before that, like week 7, week 10, and those were very important because if you didn't do well there, you couldn't get off base. And sometimes you just want to get out of that base just to let off a little steam, but it's an intense period. But the whole point of OCS is you're taking these college kids and you're tearing them down as dirty civilians and building them back up to be naval officers, ones that the drill instructors are going to be proud to salute. I don't remember my class chief very well. Remember he was a boxer, but my class officer, he was hilarious. He was a pilot. His code name was Dingo, and he had some great stories, which I'll tell off camera, because I don't want to get in trouble afterwards.
Yeah.
But he was a fun time. I remember that 4th week inspection, I actually did fairly well, and my class officer actually came by. He's like, "You're pretty locked on there, Officer Kenneth McMullen. Too bad the rest of your class isn't so locked on." I'm like, damn, we suck. So.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
So, when did you get activated for active duty?
So I got commissioned on October 31st, 2003, and then at that point in time I was a commissioned officer.
Yeah.
I didn't get fully trained and like submarine ready until 2005, I think it was. Like September 2005 is when I first reported to the Minneapolis St. Paul.
Yeah.
And that was actually a tough assignment at first. I went to the detailer. I said, "So they give you what your wish list. I want to be an operational fast attack out of Pearl because every young man wants to go to Pearl because it's beautiful." Well, I got a boat that was in the shipyard, was in Norfolk, Virginia, and was going to be decommissioned. So I had only got one deployment out of that.
Yeah.
So that was quite the. So trying to do a lot of your training though, but you're also in the shipyard and you're trying to get out, help the ship get everything put together, and you're there and you don't know a damn thing. And there's also a culture issue there at first because the cob, the chief of the boat, who was there just as when I first got there, he was not well liked by the crew. He was one of those dictator types, and he ran things with a tight fist. But the guy who took over from him, who got there basically a week after I did,